Hey everyone, we're going to talk about how to use and find the domain and range of different functions. And we'll see some different representations. So like we'll look at some graphs, we'll look at some equations, look at some tables. But first thing, it's important to know what domain and range mean. And the domain is all the inputs, so the domain is the x values. And the range is the y values. So you have to keep those two straight, because very often on multiple choice they may give you both values as answers, and if they want the domain or the range, that means they want that part of the coordinate. So for example, if I gave you a point like 2, 4 and it asked for the x value, you wouldn't get full credit for writing down 2, 4. You would only get full credit for writing down 2 as the answer if it was talking about the value in the domain. So it's something to think about, and we'll see those on Regents questions as we go through the course of the year. So the first one, they give us a function, they call it f of x, and they want us to evaluate each of the following. So I'm going to do the first one for you, then you can try the next two and pause the video. So this one says f of -3. So you're going to go to -3 on the x-axis, and then what you're going to do is you're going to count the spaces either up or down until you hit the graph. So in this case, there's a point 1 up, which means that 1 would be the answer for -3 as the input. So you could do the other two, and then for part B, can the function rule given by the graph give you a value when x is 5? Well, if you go to 5, when x is 5, which is right there, if you go up or down, you don't hit the graph. So the answer for this is no, and the reason is the value of 5 doesn't have a y value. Or in this case, I'll put output. So as far as to say, is x and 5 in the domain? Nope, it's not in the domain either. Okay. Now 5 isn't in the domain, but there are some other values that aren't in the domain as well. And that goes into part D. And then I'm going to have you work on part E, and I'll show you an example. So it says circle the following y values that are in the range. So if you're using the y values, you're using this line. So if I go to y equals 0, which is here, and I go right or left, I do have input values that give me 0 out as an answer. I actually have 1, 2, 3 points that would give me 0 as an answer. So I am going to circle y equals 0. So see if you have points that are or do contain that number as an answer. And you're basically going up or down, and then you look to the left or right and see if you hit the graph. Now, for the domain and range, I'm going to write the answers for the domain and the range up here. You can write them below. I just want to make sure you can see the graph. But the idea for the domain is you want to figure out how far left and right the graph goes. So the leftmost point of the graph is here, so the first domain value is going to be 5 spaces to the left, which in this case would be -5. Now we're going to write this as a single inequality like it asked in the question. And then the rightmost point is this point, which means that 3 is going to be the highest domain value. So everything from -5 to 3 is in the domain and on the graph. And for the range, you want the lowest point. So the lowest point in the graph is here, and the highest point, which happens to be the same point we used for one of the values for the domain. But the lowest value is 4 down, which would be -4, and the y values go from -4 all the way up to 5. Now notice the difference that I used x for domain and y for range, because that's what the values represent. Now, we're going to move on to exercise 2 on the back. I'm going to get you started with that one. Now, this one gives you a function. They call it f of x. They give you certain domain values, and they want you to fill in the range. So basically what you're doing, to find each value, you're just going to substitute the domain value in. So in this case, it'd be -4 divided by 2 minus 3. And you can put that in the calculator. And for my answer for this one, I'm going to get negative 5. So that's the range value, and I put that in that circle that they have. And that will be included in my answer at the bottom. That'll be the first one. Now you can do 6 and 10, do those ones on your own. I'm going to talk a little bit about exercise 3, but that's kind of like when we talked about which one of these is not in the domain. And again, these are x values, so you want to use the x-axis for this one. Okay, so make sure you use the x value for this one. And then from there, for exercise number 4, they want you to determine the range of the function. Well, we're going to need to do some graphing for this. So I'm going to show you how to put the first one in the calculator, but these are the two equations that are going to go in y equals. So you put each of those in y equals in the calculator. And again, then when you do the table, you're focusing on those x values. So for the first graph, I only need table values from -4 to 2. So those are the ones you're going to copy off of the graph and connect those lines. And then for the other one, I only need values from 2 to 4. Now just be careful when you put in that first equation. So when you go to y equals, just make sure you do it correctly. It's a negative, and then we have parentheses x plus 2 parenthesis divided by 2, okay? And then from there, like I said, use that inequality to fill in the table values, and then do the graph, and again, they're asking for range, so how low and how high does that graph get? So if you get stuck with this, please ask for help in class, and good luck.